So hello, everyone, and welcome to the Community Marriage Initiative monthly training event. My name is Katie Ray. I'm with Marriage Initiative, and I have the privilege of working closely with our outstanding CMI teams across the U.S. as they connect and serve with intentional purpose in their respective communities. I'd like to thank you all for joining us here today. But before we get started, I always like to do a recap of our previous month's event, just for those who weren't here. So in August, we had the honor of hosting Dr. Bill Doherty, where he really encouraged faith leaders in the community on how to stay motivated in this work. And he also sent encouragement on how to find your voice before moving forward in the marriage space. He also touched on a few of his books, such as Why Marriage Matters and Take Back Your Marriage. And lastly, Dr. Doherty spoke on his Minnesota Couples on the Brink project. We also heard from Bob Rauscher as he presented on his vision for building a CMI in Charlotte, North Carolina. And lastly, we had the pleasure of hearing from Ms. Deanna Sanchez, who's on our call today, as she spoke on the importance of being intentional when communicating. And this month, we have two additional remarkable leaders joining us here today. But before I introduce our first speaker, Ms. Celeste Larue in Nashville, Tennessee, will be opening us up in prayer. So Celeste, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Katie. Dear Heavenly Father, we adore you. We love you. We trust you. We draw near to you because you are pleased with your children when we do. You are our Abba Father. Thank you for showing us your great love and patience with us. Thank you for today. Thank you for new mercies. Thank you for your divine power, splendid glory, and perfect plans, each one of us on our call today. Thank you for loving us the way parents love their children. Thank you for the marriage champions on the call today, for their hearts, for their ministries, and to expand our territories. We ask you send us more people and couples to become marriage champions, Lord. We are here because we have a calling on our hearts and a purpose for our giftings. Show us, Lord, your will. Prompt our spirit and we are walking in your will. Lord, your plan is perfect, and you use imperfect people to do your will. So here we are, Lord. Lord, help us build a community of those to support the covenant of marriage between a man and a woman. Show us how to share the resources we have prepared with divine inspiration. Equip us to be ready to fight battle on behalf of all marriages everywhere, in every corner of the earth. Lord, help us unite in an effort to minister to those hurting in their marriage. Bring those who are weary and heavy laden so you, Father, can give them rest. Open doors in your perfect time as we prepare ourselves and our good works to spread the good news to those who need to know you, for those who need healing. Lord, we pray for protection for all healthy marriages, and may these couples bring hope to those who need it. We pray for the reluctant spouses, the betrayed spouses, the committed spouses, the unsaved spouses, and for the children caught in the crossfire, Lord. We pray for healing in those households where there seems to be no rest. Help husbands and wives recommit to one another and rekindle the love they once had when they stood before you in holy matrimony. We ask that you equip, prepare, and show us how and when to move forward only when inspired by you. Bless our speaker today, and thank you for today's divine appointment and what we're about to experience together. In Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Celeste. That was beautifully said.
My pleasure.
So first on our agenda for today, we have Miss Julie Bumgardner. And for 23 years, Julie was part of the First Things First leadership team, as many of you probably know, where for 19 of those years, she served as the president and CEO. And then in January of 2021, Julie took on a new role as the senior director of Winshape Marriage for the Winshape Foundation. And during her tenure at First Things First, the award-winning nonprofit dedicated to strengthening families in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the organization generated model duplication efforts nationwide and garnered international attention for its outstanding leadership in family, marriage, and parental issues. Since 1997, First Things First has received numerous awards, including the Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce's Nonprofit of the Year, as well as Best of the Best Nonprofit for 5 consecutive years by the Chattanooga Times Free Press readers. As a passionate advocate for helping people have healthy relationships, Julie reached hundreds of thousands each week through her Chattanooga Times Free Press column, ring to it, a YouTube-based talk show that focuses on all things relational. She was a frequent speaker to local and state groups, and Julie currently serves on the Chattanooga Women's Leadership Institute Board and the Chattanooga Area of Commerce's Leadership Curriculum Committee. For more than 30 years, Julie has provided valuable leadership for Hamilton County and Tennessee state initiatives for parental involvement, gang violence prevention, and early childhood and character education. Along with the First Thing First development team, Julie has written and received funding for local, state, and multi-million-dollar federal grant proposals and has raised millions in private funding. Often in the national spotlight, Julie is past board chair for the board for the National Association for Relationship and Marriage Education. She has presented at the White House Conference on Helping America's Youth. She's testified on Capitol Hill about the benefits of marriage and speaks nationwide on topics related to strengthening marriage, fatherhood, and families. Internationally, Julie has presented at the World Congress for Families in Amsterdam and at the International Smart Marriage Conferences. Because of Julie's marriage and family expertise, she is broadly utilized as a consultant by communities and agencies and is a sought-after speaker and retreat leader. Julie's tireless efforts have been recognized across the globe, and her many honors and accomplishments include the International Smart Marriages Impact Award and the NARMI Vision and Leadership Award, just to name a few. Julie and her husband, Jay, have been married since 1989, and they are the proud parents of their daughter, Ashley. In Julie's free time, she enjoys gardening, horseback riding, cooking, and working with children, mentoring couples, and baking. And I'm gonna have to take a drink of water after reading your long list of accomplishments. And I hope you just know how honored we are to have you here today, Julie. So thank you so much for joining us here today. I know that you have a very busy schedule.
This is my passion, and I would not want to be anywhere else. So thank you for having me.
So I wanted to start out our discussion with, what you've been up to since leaving First Things First. And I know that I briefly mentioned it in your introduction, but if you could kind of take a deeper dive into your new role at Winshape and how it was transitioning after being with one organization for over 20 years.
So my role at Winshape as the Senior Director of Winshape Marriage consists of leading retreats, creating retreats, and really looking at what are the resources that people, churches, organizations need to help people have healthy marriages and families. So we do have retreats at Winshape, but one of the coolest things that we've done in the last year and a half, we retooled an experience called Host Couple Training, which is really marriage discipleship training where couples can come to Winshape for a weekend and they will be poured into, but at the same time, they will be equipped to go back into their community and do life on life with other couples. And that has been probably one of the most exciting things that we've offered, because it really isn't about Winshape being forward facing. It's about being able to resource folks and then send them out and continue to resource them over time with curriculum and tools and all the things that they need to actually walk with other people and help them to have healthy marriages and families. So that's exciting. The other thing that we're doing is an R&R experience for ministry leaders, which ought to be of interest to everybody on this call, and pastors, senior pastors, and international missionaries. People come on a Monday. This is a couple experience. So they come on a Monday and they stay until Friday. And throughout the week, we have strategic programming opportunities coupled with couple experiences, downtime, opportunity to just exhale and breathe. And I felt like that was really important because as a ministry leader, I was tired and I felt like I didn't really have anywhere that I could go where people wouldn't freak out if I said, I'm tired, or this fundraising is so hard, I feel like I'm beating my head against a brick wall. The ministry leaders, they're all doing the same thing. So they understand, and it just feels like a safe space, retool, and go back feeling invigorated and ready for whatever God has in store next. So doing those kinds of things, we've retooled a lot of our retreats, created some amazing romantic adventures, and we are looking at moving beyond the Winshape campus because we're very full here. So looking at perhaps going out west, up north, down south, and international in the next 5 to 10 years. So lots going on there. And when you ask me about the transition, it was not at all. I mean, leaving was not something I expected. It was very clearly a God call. And I think that knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was my next assignment made it really interesting, because first things first felt like my baby. I was the second person on staff. We launched it, we birthed it, and I thought I would retire from there. I had no idea that I would move somewhere else. But when the phone call came, God just made it very clear to me that I would be leaving first things first and moving into this role. And I think because that was abundantly clear, I wasn't going to be disobedient. So if you had asked me before it happened, hey, would it be hard for you to leave first things first? I'd be like, are you crazy? I think it would feel like I had a limb removed. But it wasn't that. And I think I just came to this place where I told the Lord, if this is what I'm supposed to do, then you're going to have to work out all the details. Otherwise, I'm going to freak out. So do that. And I've just been kind of resting in that over the last year and a half, almost 2 years since I've been here. So.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie. And as we know, we never know which path God has us, going down in the future.
Yeah.
So,
Really.
well, it sounds like it is a perfect match for you. And we've all heard wonderful things about Winshape. So glad to hear that things are going well and that you're happy. So moving on to our next question, Julie, you know that our audience is a group of community leaders. And you also probably know that oftentimes as leaders in the community doing this type of work, it can feel isolating and frustrating. And at times, as you're just kind of talking about, moving 2 steps forward and maybe 1 step back. So what advice would you have for our community leaders here today? And more specifically, what would be your advice for taking first steps as they begin, just initially coming together?
Within their community, right?
Yes.
Yes. I would say, in my experience, one of the things that I definitely felt, it was easy to feel isolated and to feel siloed. And so one thing that I would say is I just made an intentional effort to strategically involve myself, and other team members did this as well, in community initiatives that allowed us to engage with people we might not normally engage with. And that turned out to be one of the best strategic moves that we made over time, because it allowed us to be connected to many different spheres in the community. And it made relationships possible with people that we probably wouldn't have crossed paths with otherwise, because with First Things First, people were like, oh, you're just a faith-based Christian organization. You only want to deal with these people. And we just had to be very consistent with our message that we are out here and we are seeking to serve people, and we want to engage with lots of different folks. And so we were in the school system, we were in the healthcare system, we were in the faith-based community, we were involved in government, we were involved with the Chamber of Commerce, we were involved with a lot of different businesses. But we had to be very intentional about doing that. Probably one of the most strategic moves that we did was to engage with the Chattanooga leadership, which was based out of the Chamber of Commerce. I went through that very early on and then asked to be a part of the curriculum committee, which I loved. I love leadership. So that's my second passion. So I had this opportunity to be about leadership, but also to meet people from all over the place, which then they asked the question, tell us more about First Things First, which allowed me to have conversations with many different types of people. So I would just say, be careful about letting people pigeonhole you, and be intentional about getting out there and engaging in different ways in the community. Go to your school system and get involved with them. Go to healthcare. And the reason that I liked being involved with leadership is I saw people from all those different entities. I created relationship that opened doors for more relationship.
Mhm. Wonderful. Thank you for that, Julie. And now kind of switching gears a bit, but I wanted to turn our focus towards marriage and it being a very hot button issue. And as we know, there is a lot of cultural and personal pain around the world, the word marriage. How do you navigate that in different settings?
You know, it's interesting. And Ron, you'll, this feels like 1997, right? In 1997, when First Things First launched, you wouldn't use, it was called the M word. Like nobody was using the word. And it almost feels like we're back to this place. However, I can tell you, and I think you all know this, I'm preaching to the choir at this point. There's so many people who are interested in marriage and they're interested in doing it well, and they want to know how to do it well. And so I think that we can get derailed by listening to the media and hearing people say to us, nobody cares about marriage. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say about marriage. That's exactly what was said to us in 1997. And lo and behold, our phone rang off the hook, classes filled up, and people really do want to know about marriage. If we think that marriage doesn't really matter, go look at the marriage industry. They are very clearly busy, and there's lots of people that are getting married. And so we have this opportunity to focus on a group of folks who are definitely interested in it. And even with young people in high school and in college, they are very interested in this whole relationship thing. I think, as you all know, there's a lot of them that lack confidence that they would actually be a good judge of a marriage partner, but they're very interested in it. And so I think we have to steady the course. We need to stay up on the research. We need to be very willing to engage in a conversation and have civil conversation around it. I mean, I think that's the other piece, is that we have a voice. We can use it in a powerful way that is civil and respectful and Christ-like at every turn, but doesn't back off of the fact that people were made for relationship and people are definitely interested in marriage. So we are here to serve, and how we do that open-handedly, Christ honoring, that's just powerful. And I think we need to stay prayed up and carry on and do what God has called us to do, and not be afraid. I mean, I just think, yeah, we're walking around with targets on our back. I was talking to my team last week and I said, I feel like, I mean, we were doing all these things. I feel like I'm just walking around with this big target on my back, and I'm just like staying prayed up. And I said, man, we need to put on our armor every day and go for it wholeheartedly, all in, go for it. And I would say the same to all of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. And kind of piggybacking off of that question, what is something that we are not talking about in churches that we should be talking about in churches? Any thoughts on that?
How long do we have for this?
We have quite a while, so feel free.
Wow. Uh, I think what we're not talking about in churches, and I have this conversation all the time. What we're not talking about in churches is that there is no perfect marriage. So you come to church and everybody puts on their best face, even though they fought all the way to church, and they're going to pick it right back up where they left off when they get back in the car. What we're not talking about is nobody has the perfect marriage. And so equipping people with the tools to understand emotional intelligence, to teach your children about emotional intelligence, and how do we raise our kids not to be robots, not to raise children who don't question environment at home that is safe and stable. Your marriage is the security blanket, if you will, so that your children can grow and develop and thrive. And man, churches have the greatest opportunity because people are coming. And so if we talked about it from the pulpit, if we actually had small groups that were going through materials that help people to understand so many, I've had people say to me, well, if you're angry, like that's sinful, except for we all get angry. So who are we kidding? And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I'm just saying that if we could help pastors, which I think that right there is a struggle in and of itself, because I think a lot of pastors struggle with getting in the pulpit and talking about healthy marriage when their spouse is sitting in the front row saying, man, you ought to pay attention to this message. So there's that. But the other piece of it is there's plenty of people in the church that are very interested in how do we grow our marriage and help it to be healthy, and how do we walk alongside others. And I think that's our real opportunity, is to give them resources, help them to know what really good small group material is out there, and how to just walk alongside someone, which is what the host couple training really is all about. Encouraging people and knowing your limitations. If we were having those conversations in the church, man, it would be a new day. If we would be honest about communication's hard for us. Conflict, I mean, one of us is conflict avoidant and one of us is like running right into it because we're like, let's just deal with it. So all the things we know, y'all, if we could help the churches to actually have those conversations in non-boring, non-preachy ways, way more experiential, that would be powerful. A lesson learned for us, we've been doing all these retreats, and my husband and I started teaching a retreat that we hadn't taught before. The curriculum was already written and it was called Romantic Adventure. And as we were really getting into it and trying to quickly digest it, my husband looked at me and he goes, this is not romantic and it is not an adventure. And I was like, hello. So we renamed that retreat, but we have created some romantic adventures that are highly experiential. They are absolutely biblically based, but they are not sit and soak experiences. They are actually get out and do. And then we're going to, through the process, teach you through the process. Oh my word. In 2023, those retreats are selling out faster than anything else, because that's what people want and that's what they're used to. So I think we would be very wise to pay attention to that. How do we teach through the process? How do we make things experiential and inviting? And I'm not saying over the top exciting. I'm saying easy to digest and take in the information we're trying to teach them. Long answer to your short question. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. And what did you say the retreat was renamed to?
Romantic Adventure. So we have Romantic Adventure Couples Challenge Course, Romantic Adventure Couples Quest. Think Great American Race, but it's not a race. It's a quest with 51 checkpoints. Okay. And they're emotional, spiritual, and physical in nature. And then we have Play with a Purpose, Romantic Adventure Play with a Purpose. So, and we'll continue to add to those because it's literally what people want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It sounds like a wonderful, wonderful program. Thank you for that. And moving on to our next question. So, I know that a lot of our community leaders here today are messaging to different groups, as you had mentioned in one of your responses earlier, how important it is to connect with the different avenues, businesses, schools, churches, etc. When thinking of these different channels of communication, how is it different when messaging to our partners versus when messaging to the public? How does that differ?
A relationship. I would say with your partners, do your homework and know, there's nothing, what's the right word? When a partner comes in and they have very clearly done their homework and they know who I am and what my company is trying to accomplish and what I'm passionate about, and they speak to that and say, this is how we think we could serve you based on what you've said to us about who you are and what you're looking for. That speaks volumes to people because you actually cared enough to figure out who I am and what I'm all about, what I'm trying to accomplish ahead of coming in the door. When you walk in and all you do is just kind of throw up on me who you are and what you do, it's like a sales pitch, right? And what people want is to know, well, what's really in it for me? So I think Ron, you've definitely heard me talk about feature, function, and benefit, where we're great at talking feature, function, who we are, what we do. We're not great about actually helping people understand, well, what's the win for you? We worked with a very large national business that happened to be based in Chattanooga. Their employee engagement was, tanking, and they were trying to figure out what they could do. And this is a company that has a training and development department, and they came to us and just said, we're not doing well in this area. Can you help us? And so we asked a whole lot of questions, went back, put together a proposal about things that we felt like we had in the way of tools and equipping and experiences that we could bring to the table for them that would not only help their people to engage better at work, but would also help them at home. And we all know if people are doing well at home, the likelihood of them doing well at work is significantly greater, and vice versa. So doing your homework for sure, with the different entities that you're going to speak to, and just not getting lazy with that. I think it's easy to think, oh yeah, I know, versus taking the time to learn. That's important. So I think that that's the different thing with the groups that we're seeking to really be in relationship with. We all know how we feel when somebody shows up and it looks like they've cared enough to figure out who we are. It's amazing. We're like, holy cow, they actually know us. And they want to engage with us. That's amazing. So being known and valued for that's huge. And then I think for the general public, messaging that would resonate with what they're dealing with. Everybody, man, COVID's done a number on everybody. So people are struggling in that area, struggling to figure out how do we do this and do it well after what we've been through for 2 years, because it feels like everybody expects us to just be over it, and we're not over it. So what does resilience look like in relationship, in families, in marriages? Being relevant, creating messaging that is relevant for right now. I think that right there is probably our biggest challenge, because if we're using things that we've had in our toolbox for a while in the same way that we were using them before COVID, we probably need to take a good hard look at how do we retool and how do we make sure that we are very relevant for this moment in time. and the opportunity that is being given to us to engage with people.
That's great advice. Thank you, Julie. And we can't leave here today without asking you about first things first approach to marketing and communications. We know that you guys were on buses and billboards and really all around the city. So tell us, how did you make that happen? How did you and your team make that happen?
Again, relationship. I mean, at the heart of everything, it is relational. We actually sat down at one point, every single member of the team, and I asked people to write down all their relationships in terms of where they worshiped, where their kids went to school, organizations that they were involved in, things they were passionate about, where they knew people. And then we just started kind of talking about where we felt like we needed to be. The billboard situation happened because prior to coming to First Things First, I had been a marketing director for a region of hospitals. And so I knew a rep at the billboard company across the community that were flagging just in terrible shape, which did not speak highly for the billboard company. So I just called them and said, hey, we might have a helpful solution to you for you. We would be willing to create excellent billboard messaging, and we're willing to print. Back then it was print, now it would be digital, but print them. Would you consider giving us a number of boards for a very reasonable price, because we don't have a ton of money? And for many years they did that, and we were very careful and sought to create messaging with excellence that was relevant to the community, and it served them well and it served us. So it was mutually beneficial. So there's that. The other thing that I would say is truly, I think, it's always a no if you don't ask, 100% guaranteed. And the worst thing that can happen is you go and you present something to someone and they say no, and it's no today. It may not be no tomorrow or the next day. And at least you've planted a seed that, hey, we're here. The reason that the column happened in the paper is because I was looking at the lifestyle section of the paper, and I just noticed that they had a lot of different types of columns, but nothing related to marriage and family. I just asked, have you ever thought about a marriage and family column? And the lifestyle editor said, we've thought about it a million times, but we don't have anybody to write it. And I said, well, I know somebody who'd be willing to write it. And she said, we can't pay you. And I said, I could care less about being paid, which actually turned out great for us, because it meant that First Things First actually owned the column, and we let the Times Free Press use it. And then we were able to take that material and content and use it in a variety of other ways, still happening today. I passed the column along to another team member at First Things First. It's still being written, and it's not just in the hard copy paper, it's on their digital page. And I have not checked since I left, but before I left, it was one of their most popular reads digitally, which tells you again that people are looking for solid, truthful, healthy relationship tools and equipping. So asking if people would be interested in that. They limited me to 500 words, man. I learned how to be concise and tell it like it is in 500 words. So that was a great learning experience for me. But it's just asking who knows who, and if they'd be willing to open a door for you or have a conversation with someone to say, hey, this would be worth looking at. It was worth its weight in gold for us all the time through the years. Billboards, bus placards were the same way as the billboards. We did the very same approach with them. They had old placards, 6 months, some a year old, which looked like they weren't selling. So we worked with them to create something. We also partnered. There was a company in town that had contracted to wrap electric buses, and they already had several of those buses. One of the people, one of the executives at the company was on our board, and he said, hey, if I gave you a bus, would you co-brand it with us?
100%. So we had a bus, an electric bus that traveled through Chattanooga for years, probably more than a decade. Healthy relationships start here. And it had First Things First and Republic Parking. And Republic Parking is a national company based in Chattanooga. It's just keeping your eyes wide open, looking for the opportunity, looking for those local magazines and asking, hey, would you ever consider including an article from us on healthy relationships? And then I do think you have to be wise. I mean, we were a secular organization based on Judeo-Christian values. And so we were in the churches and we were in the secular world singing the same message. And so being aware of your messaging in the different places that you are, it drew in a lot of people and it helped us to engage with hundreds of thousands of couples. And there's still tons. I mean, it's crazy cool what's happening.
What an amazing story. And we have a question that's coming in from Austin, Texas. Paul is asking, what is the name of the article and where was it published? It looks like you may want to look into it.
So the Chattanooga Times Free Press. If it was for years, it was called First Things First, believe it or not.
Okay.
You could, if you just Google Chattanooga Times Free Press, Julie Baumgardner, you'd probably see a bunch of them pop up.
Okay.
Mitchell Qualls is writing them now, and I think it's still called First Things First.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And then thinking back to your, having to do it in 500 words or less, it's always easier to write a long story than it is a short one. So I bet you did become an expert in being very concise.
Well, I had a friend who was kind enough to edit the columns starting out, and she was ruthless.
Redlined everything.
Yeah, it was a great experience for me because I wouldn't tell you that I considered myself a writer, but learning how to write and learning how to be a good speaker, those were two things that were very high priorities for me. And learning how to be a great storyteller, how to get my message across, and to learn less is more. So that's been huge, and I would challenge everybody to do that. Don't underestimate what you can learn. Someone said, I'm 60. I left First Things First right before turning 60, and they were like, wait, no, you're supposed to be retiring. I'm like, there is nothing biblical about retirement. I am not retiring. I'm going on to the next chapter. And I feel really strongly about that, that if you're not learning, you're dying, and we're all called to be engaged, and that's just part of being a believer. So I do challenge everybody, learn how to be a good writer and learn how to speak well.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, lastly, I'm going to end with a short question that may have an even lengthier answer, but we'll see. Why are sustainability and diversified funding streams so important in this type of work?
They are important because if you want to be around over the long haul, you will make sure that you're paying attention to sustainability and that you are diversifying your funding streams. And I mean, I say this as someone who came to the nonprofit world having never raised money. I did not know about development. And I learned baptism by fire at every turn. I mean, at one point I had all my eggs in one basket, and that was not helpful. And so over time, I learned very quickly. There's a great book called Let's Have Lunch. It's by Marshall Howard. I highly recommend it. It's a super easy read. It reads like a novel. But putting that into play, I think that is the hardest thing for people that I talk to who are leading organizations. They say, man, my board members are like, oh, I'll do anything for you. Do not make me ask people for money, except for people want to give, and they want to know what you're doing and how their giving can help you move forward. And so by being able to talk to people and help them to see a vision for what you're doing, measurable outcomes. That's huge. And how what you're doing really is a win for them. It's a win for the community. It's a win for our country by helping people to have strong, healthy marriages. There's nothing political about that. It is research-based, certainly scripturally, biblically informed, that helping people to do that well across the board makes us all better. And so having your story, being able to be succinct with that story, and be relational. And that's what I love about Let's Have Lunch, is that Marshall Howard makes it very simple. He just really simplifies the whole process. This really is about being relational with people and helping them to know how they can make a difference in this world, and asking them for $5,000 versus $1,000 versus $500. There's no difference. And often people are very flattered that you think that they could give that amount, but then they would turn around and give what they can. And we found that trying to help people give to us on a monthly basis, because they might commit in January, but you wouldn't see it until November. And if you're trying to create a budget, that just makes it very complicated. So sustainability, I would tell you, you need a plan. You need to start working with people. Even if they give $1, that's beautiful, because if they give $1, then chances are great that over time, as you continue to engage with them, you will strategically move them further. So we had people who started out at $50 and ended up giving thousands of dollars, because they could actually see in business terms the return on their investment and what was happening as a result. People making the decision not to divorce, but to actually work on their marriage, or people getting the tools they need at the very beginning as they're preparing for marriage, versus after they get married and realizing, oh my goodness, we just had no earthly idea what we were getting into. There's lots of value there. So creating your vision and your mission, and being strategic about how you talk to people about what you're doing, not throwing up all over them. I mean, really honing your message, doing your homework ahead of time, and engaging with lots of different folks will serve you well over time when it comes to fundraising. And there's lots of options for that, for sure.
Well, that is just so helpful. I know for us and our partner cities around the US, that's one question that we often get, regarding sustainability and donor relations. And so it's to be able to hear from you, someone who has, been in this space for so long. It's just so valuable. And we're so honored to have you here today. Thank you so much, Julie. And I think a few other additional questions came in. So I was messaging them and letting them know that, you will be sticking around afterwards, and there'll be a few questions coming in, if that's okay. But again, Julie, thank you so much. This was such a wonderful interview, and we're just so honored to have you here with us today. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to our next presenter, we have a member of Marriage Initiative joining us, Miss Anna Panter. And Anna has been part of the organization for 4 years and oversees the Relationships and Development Division here at Marriage Initiative. And today, Anna will be sharing on Development Messaging Framework, Preparing for Conversations with Funders. So Anna, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Katie. I just have to get this out of the way. Why was it a good idea for me to follow Julie? How brutal can y'all be? I'm soaking up everything from Julie. So I would like to go ahead and just forewarn everyone, I'm here to present some very practical basics. You've already received your expert knowledge. So just to set expectations appropriately. Go ahead and do that. Okay, I am going to share my screen in just 1 second here. So today, I'm going to share with you a framework that we created on our team that really was a tool to help me conceptualize and understand the approach that I need to take when it comes to knowing my audience of funders. And Julie mentioned something about that as well. So bear with me. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here we go. Often we are reluctant to ask for money, but by sharing your work and inviting someone to join in, you bring a gift. You bring an invitation for others to have a very real impact on lives, homes, and children. Marriage is the first institution created by God. It's the most profound human relationship and the legacy that will impact generations we will never see. In the Stanford Social Innovation Review, Dr. Rohit Menezes, I struggle saying his name, he said, families are self-healing systems, and individuals and families define and lead for themselves the improvement they seek in their lives and communities, since they are the closest to their challenges and know how to best overcome them. So our work inspires, equips, and empowers families to do just that. As we approach potential funders, it's important that we convey the value of diversified philanthropy, caring for and meeting the downstream needs while investing in wellness and prevention before trauma takes place. So let's begin the tour of the document. But first, a quick story. So one day, Carl and I decided it's important to identify the different funders that give to our organization and break down even further what motivates them most. We want to appeal to their natural motivations with integrity and intention. So these elements that we came to are story, strategy, metrics, and gospel. So we will define each of these elements before exploring the strategic allocation for each of them with a different audience. So the first element is story. And I will take us there. So here we have our table of contents, and here are the talking elements, not elephants, and how we can briefly define each one. So story, a story of impact, it brings human impact to the donor experience. Stories illustrate the gift of hope and transformation in the lives of our neighbors. So prepare your own personal story or tell the stories of marriages or children, maybe of divorce season or collaborative partners who have been impacted by your work. These stories illustrate the gift of hope. And truly at the heart of every strategic donor, they want to have that human impact. And those are beautiful anecdotal evidences of that. So I actually have a question I'd like to throw out to the group for a brief response. I did only get about 10 minutes or so we will have to keep it concise. But does anybody want to share a story, a brief story that maybe has highlighted the value of your work? And if nobody wants to share today, that's okay, but at least it's a prompt to get you thinking about what this might sound like.
Can you repeat the question again, Anna?
Sure. Does anyone in the Zoom room have a story, or can you think of a story that may highlight the value of your work that you'd like to share with the group?
Ian has his hand raised. Ian, you can go ahead.
All right, so we actually did one of our adventures in marriage classes a couple months ago in a very rural community. And one of the couples that showed up said 3 weeks prior, they were discussing divorce. Mm-hmm. And they went through our curriculum over the course of about a month and a half. And by the end of it, they were holding hands. They were telling us how they were setting their alarm earlier in the day just so they could have a little bit of time together before their day actually kicked off. And we just launched another class in that area. They were one of the first ones to sign up because they said, we want to keep investing. So just being able to see something like that just really makes it all worthwhile.
Ian, that is so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so you just definitely added quality to this presentation. So let's move on to strategy. Here we go. So strategy is the organizational strategy. It conveys the intentional plan of how our work provides a solution to a critical and relatable need. As part of your strategy, you should always have a case statement prepared. And this statement needs to be clear and concise summary of your organization's work and why people should give to your mission. Your case statement explains your mission, your mission, your history, your vision, your goals, and reasons why someone might give. Go ahead and include how the work is sustainable, reproducible, and how it aligns with your listener. Consider the use of compelling visual aids or illustrations of how this work bridges a chasm using upstream or prevention versus downstream approach. Many of us have probably noticed that downstream is a very popular philanthropic effort, and sometimes it takes a little bit of clarity, the gift of clarity, and honor the value of prevention in the work that we do. We want to meet marriages where they are before trauma takes place. So I have another question for you all. Can you think of a way in which your work meets a need, or how is your work sustainable? And
I do. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Rosalind Hickman in Chattanooga. Hi, Julie. I was wanting to jump in on the first one, but I can jump in on the second one as well. One of the values that we bring to the table, we work with the Christian churches in Chattanooga, Tennessee as well. And one of the values that we bring to the pastors is that we take the load of 6 to 8 weeks of counseling off of their plate. Pastors don't want to have to, take away too much of their time for their primary calling to their congregations. And what we're praised most for in this city is that we actually are like Aaron's to them. And so they're able to send their couples to us, and it is complimentary. And so we definitely try to make that known so that the investments coming in, they know that it would be talking with couples who otherwise wouldn't come, probably if they had to pay the going fee. So the counseling aspect that we do, and then we also train couples in their church and certify them to do it as well. Was that your question? Was it 2 parts?
Well, it was either or, but that was a beautiful answer. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yes, okay.
Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. The third element is metrics. So metrics present measured outcomes of impact. They just consider measuring the divorce rate in your county. I know on our team, we just did that last week, and we saw some incredible new information that we're really excited about, but also double checking. You can measure your collaborative partnerships, or maybe if you've created print or translated materials that provide greater access of your work in the community, you can put those into your metrics, or maybe with your collaborating churches or venues, event and program numbers. So does anyone have other examples of metrics that you think might be important to consider or that you use?
I can give an example if nobody has one.
That'd be great.
So we measured in our premarital, we measured over time. We were asking people who went through the premarital experience, did you marry the person that you came to premarital with?
Mm.
And then, so 86% did. And then we asked them to rate their marital health, and if they were still using the skills. And so close to 86% married the person they came to premarital with, and then right at 85% rated their marriage as very happy and that they were definitely using the skills and they found them helpful. But what the other piece that was very helpful was the percentage that did not go on to marry the person that they came to premarital with. That was a really good stat for us to share with people, that we were helping people to actually learn and figure out, oh my goodness, we probably don't have any business walking down the aisle because we don't have a good handle on all these other areas. So that was interesting for us and for donors.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so we'll go on to the fourth element. So the fourth one is the gospel. As a faith-driven organization, it is important to understand how gospel principles align and propel the effectiveness of this work into every community and home, or your community and home. So is there anybody that would want to share, or maybe you've had an experience, as why it is important to include the gospel among these other elements? And it's okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on, but we're not going to leave that question unanswered.
I'm sorry. I was trying to get on. I'm actually outside and it's difficult for me to come off mute. Can I answer?
Please do.
Yes. Again, that's our platform. It's working with churches, and I can, if I understood your question, how the gospel has an impact on bringing in partners. Is that what your question was?
Yeah.
Was that your question?
Yes. Why is it important to include the gospel?
Okay, because primarily our clients and customers are Christian. They understand the biblical impact of the gospel in marriage. It is a picture of Christ and the church. And so to challenge them not to just do marriage because of their own interests, but do marriage because God said that it was a picture to the world of Christ and the church. And if a lot of times they would score high on their assessments about, the spiritual aspect of what they believe and their compatibility in that area. However, if they don't associate that belief into their everyday practices, such as patience and kindness and forgiveness, then we try to make that connection for them. So marriage is not just about you, it's about the gospel, and the gospel that's being seen not just in the four walls, but before your children, in the workplace. You take that wherever you go. And so I think that has opened the eyes of some people who didn't know that. They are in church, but maybe they hadn't studied marriage biblically, and the pastors can't preach on it every Sunday. So again, I think that is the way we get their attention about taking the gospel forward in their marriage.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful response. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So now let's think about the categories of offenders that you might engage with and how much time you should allocate to each of them with your talking points and when inspiring others about this work. So here we go. The 5 types of funders that Carl and I agreed were our most common audiences are individual donors, strategic independent donor advised funds. Maybe you've heard those referred to as DAFs in the past. Businesses might be your audience, churches, or foundations. You also may notice the percentages on our graph can seem very specific. For instance, I'll draw your attention to story. It says 46%. Really, that is a reflection of Carl and I coming to a compromise when we didn't agree on round estimates. So that's where it came from, if you're wondering. All right, so let's begin with how to allocate elements for conversation with individuals. Individuals tend to reflect quickly on their own experiences. They're inspired by people in their intimate communities, including their family. For this reason, we feel that stories of hope are most influential in creating alignment when speaking to individuals in an audience. So of course, people want to hear evidence of other elements as well, but they'll likely be moved as they connect a story with someone in their hearts and mind. And then likewise, the gospel often brings reminders of personal moments individuals have experienced with conviction or worship or God moments. All right. So I'll just give you guys just a moment to really just review that individual donors, really talking to them. Our conversation can safely remain in the context of marriage. Julie referenced that sometimes marriage is the M word. And so you've really got to kind of pick and choose where you emphasize, I guess, that context. Not that we would hide who we are at all, but okay. The next audience we focus on is strategic independent donor advised funds. These are often established by savvy and intentional philanthropists who understand stewardship. Often the motivation to set up these funds is connected with tax implications and protecting their assets. While they do care about stories of hope, and they likely care about the gospel by the time you're sitting with them, they typically want to evaluate the ROI, the return on investment, and learn about your strategy and metrics. So for that reason, when you look at the chart, you'll see definitely a different distribution, excuse me, of okay. So I'm sorry, my daughter sent a message and it threw me off. So I'm just going to recenter myself if that's okay. And let's see, there are the strategic independent donor advised funds. Okay, now the next one are businesses. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay. Businesses are often established after a season of hard work and strategic thinking. Business owners often recognize the sacrifices they made to achieve their terms of success. So for this reason, they are typically motivated by the impact on the family as a whole and appreciate strategy and metrics. However, stories of hope and the gospel are likely motivators for how they got into business to begin with. Oftentimes, it may have something to do with wanting to provide for their family, or other very personal reasons. So the fourth audience is for us is churches. Churches also are heavily focused on the context of family because every person in their parish or congregation is somehow connected to family. It relates to every ministry and the health of the church as a whole, but we emphasize the power of healthy marriages in the church and how couples in healthy marriages serve more, give more, attend more, and engage with others more. And when the family is included in this vision, the ROI may be generational. So their greatest natural motivator is typically the gospel, yet they understand the value of accountability. So they want to know the other elements are clearly thought out as well. And there we go. So I'm sorry if it got cut off at the bottom. I'm not sure if you can see that. And then lastly, our foundations. So let's see here. I'm sorry, folks. Okay, so foundations often have criteria attached to gifts, and they desire a long-term relationship to ensure that funds are being used wisely and the ROI is good. A gift from a foundation is often a bit more intimate in the sense that they may want to attend events, conduct office visits, or audit how the money was spent. For these reasons, it's important to allocate a good bit of effort to communicating your strategy and your metrics. Let's see. But as always, we want to include the gospel throughout our storytelling. So the important takeaway is really to always include each talking element and to know your audience and shift your conversation to their natural motivations. And then lastly, I just wanted to share two of my favorite ideas / resources with you. I really enjoy staying up to par with the Institute of Family Studies. And that's a website that anyone can visit. They do incredible research on the state of the family and marriages around our country. So I would encourage that. You can also sign up for emails from them as well, if you'd like. Sometimes in the marriage space, it can sometimes be difficult to track measurables and metrics, and that's a really great resource. The other tool, I guess, for lack of better words, that I really appreciate using is I just keep a file in my file storage system of compelling quotations and language and statistics that I might want to incorporate when I'm sharing with somebody or creating any form of communication. So that is all I have for you. Thank you, Julie. And again, on each of these graphics, you can see really just a recommended context. Again, we're not going to hide the fact that we are marriage centered, but we also can bring emphasis to what motivates them greatly. And sometimes if that's family, you know, we can definitely let them know the impact of marriage as the leadership team of the family. So thank you, guys.
Great job.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I've already had quite a few questions coming in asking if you could share your framework presentation. So if you send it to me, I'll make sure to get it out to our audience today. So thank you again, Anna. And we're going to quickly move into our Q&A because Julie does have to hop off at 1:15. And so we do want to be respectful of her time. But if you have any questions for Julie or for Anna, we'll go around the room. And if you can just simply raise your virtual hand, I will call on you, try and do it as you in order. Although sometimes I accidentally skip around, but if there's any questions, we're open to hear them. And I think a few came in through the chat box. I know that Joan, actually you had asked one through the chat box that we didn't get to during the interview. So if you want to go ahead and go first, that would be perfect. Let's see, is Joan still on? Joan McLean, Ron and Joan, are you guys still
Yes.
on? Okay.
Yes,
Does Joan, or I'm sorry, that was you, not Joan.
it was me using Joan's screen.
Okay.
So I'm curious about if our team wanted to be trained in how to do those retreats that you were talking about, that seem to be especially relevant nowadays to people and helpful and effective.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that we would actually come to Winshape and be trained in, or how do you do that?
That's a great question. And we definitely are trying to create these so that we can give them away. The couples challenge course would be a bit interesting if you don't have access to a ropes course, because it's basically high elements the whole entire weekend. However, couples quest and play with a purpose, I definitely think could be options that we would share with others, and you might want to come and actually experience it. And then we are very willing to share for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two those three are brand new this year. So we have done them. We have worked out some of the kinks. We are doing them again in 2023. And I think we'd want to make sure that we had it excellent before we actually let it out the door, but we're 100% willing to share. So
Thank you.
mhm.
Thank you, Ron. And my apologies for calling you Joan.
That's right. That's a compliment.
And are there any other questions for Julie or for Anna?
While y'all are thinking, there is a great resource. It is called Mission Increase. They are all over the country. They work with ministries and nonprofits to help them in their fundraising efforts. And that might be something that you want to look into. They provide seminars and there's networking opportunities. So it's a great thing to be connected to.
Absolutely. And I recently just heard of them. I'm going to drop a link here in the chat box so that everyone can visit their website as well.
Yeah. And just connect, like look for something that's closest to you, because they've got chapters all over the place and they definitely want to engage with ministries and nonprofits.
Wonderful. Any other questions? No? Well, I guess you guys were really efficient in answering all the questions that our audience may have had. I just want to again thank our guest speakers. I didn't earlier because I was trying to rush to the Q&A. But again, your time here was so valuable, your insight, and just we value you so much. And I know our partner cities love sitting in and hearing your expertise. So again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We enjoyed having both of you here today. And as you guys know, we do always record and post these videos on our YouTube website following our event. Guys, and I will make sure to attach Anna's presentation because I know that quite a few of you are interested in having that so that you can look through it. And with that, oh, yes,
Julie, real quick. Julie, will you answer this for me? Do you know who in Chattanooga may be Asian leaders in this area of marriage? We are trying to be as diverse as possible, and we don't know too many Asian communities. Now I'm thinking churches, okay?
Yep.
Do you know of any resources where we can get that info?
Let me give that some thought, and I can, if you will either give Katie, I'm sure I can find you, but I'll ask and see what I can find out, because I guarantee you, yeah, there's some folks in the community. I may not just be thinking of it right off the top of my head, but
Okay.
I'll certainly be happy to help you find them.
Okay, if you would, that would be a great beginning to at least know where to look and, begin to develop relationships with them.
Yeah, let me just think about that for a few minutes.
Okay, thanks. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Rosalind. And with that, did anyone? I thought I heard somebody. I don't want to cut anybody off. I want to make sure that we get all of our comments and questions in. Maybe I was just hearing something. All right, well, thank you guys again. I hope you all have a blessed weekend, and we will see you back here in October. Goodbye, everyone.